Hey guys, welcome back. I'm sorry for the delay in getting these lectures up to you this week, but between myself being sick, my kids being sick, it's just kind of put me behind the eight ball. But let's see if we can get this going. We do have a busy week for you, and I apologize for taking so long. You have two lectures you need to watch this week. Read your text. There is a quiz. You have your second exam, and you should also be working on your project as well. In addition, just to pile it on for you a little bit, I have an assignment for you on brand personalities. So it shouldn't take too long to do, but hopefully it'll be a little fun for you to think about. So let's get to the lecture this week. I'm sure you've all heard stories about two motorists going down the highway, and one of them cuts the other one off or does something that aggravates the other one, and all of a sudden you got full-blown road rage going on. Well, did you know that on average, there's about 1,500 deaths as a result of aggressive driving in the U.S. every year? And aggressive drivers can come from all walks of life: males, female, rich, poor, young, old. I mean, even celebrities have been reported to have lost their temper while driving their cars. The actor Jack Nicholson thought that one driver cut him off, and at the next red light, he stopped, pulled out a golf club, and started hitting the other car, smashing its windshield. So what causes one person to lose control while driving, while another one kind of shrugs it off? And pretty much, it's our individual differences. In short, it's our personality. Now, personality is defined as the distinct patterns of behavior, including thoughts and emotions, that people exhibit. And personality has two key uses for marketers. First, we can segment consumers because we can identify people based on their dominant personality characteristics. And because of that, marketers can then create marketing communications that can appeal to different segments of consumers who possess those certain characteristics. So we all have our own personality, and our friends have personalities. It's just surrounding us. So we have to understand it, and we have to understand how we can, use personality to be able to become better marketers.
I hate Mondays.
Yeah, they're the worst.
No worries, man. Everything will be alright.
Yeah, man.
Don't fret me, brother. Sticky bun comes soon.
Yeah! Wicked coffee, Mr. Jim. Julia, turn the frown the other way around.
Hey, Dave, you're from Minnesota, right?
Yes, the land of 10,000 lakes. The Gopher State.
So in conclusion, things are pretty dismal.
You know what this room needs? A smile. Who wanna come with I?
Traveling along, there's a song that we're singing. Come on, get happy.
You guys are 3 minutes late.
Don't be no cloud on a sunny day.
Yeah, chill, Winston.
Sir?
Respect, boss man.
That's the power of German engineering.
Maybe some people take personality a little too far sometimes. I love this Volkswagen ad, but it's very cute. But when we think about personalities, there are three essential characteristics that we must keep in mind. One, a personality can't be shared by every consumer out there. It is going to be segmented based on different individuals, just like we do with demographics or other factors. But while we cannot predict how many boxes of cereal a person is going to buy over the next year based on their personality, we can predict that some consumers have a predisposition to engage in general types of behaviors, such as those that are aggressive drivers or those that eat healthy, etc. So when we think about it, a personality, again, must be consistent over time. Okay? It must be something that we display not just 1 week and it fades away, but it must be consistent. Second, it should allow us to distinguish one group from another. And again, it assesses our predisposition or a disposition to act, not the specific actions we're going to take. And by understanding personality, marketing managers can seek to tap into the dominant personality type that with a more effective messaging. For example, Research shows that those who are likely to engage in aggressive driving possess a higher need for arousal, which is a personality trait. These drivers seek out risk and enjoy the rush of adrenaline that, I guess, aggressive driving provides. But what type of message could we use that could be, I guess, connect with these individuals to make them not as aggressive in the roadway as possible? So let's think about that for a minute. Here are a couple of examples that have been created, a couple of ads, in an effort to combat aggressive driving. Do you think either of these will be effective? If so, which one? I mean, you have the one, that was basically Delaware's "Are You That Guy?" Campaign, and again, it kind of talked about people that, being aggressive with their driving. Or, if you have another one, I think this one's from Florida, focus on your own driving. Getting aggressive won't make traffic go faster. Drive safe. I'm trying to think how effective these are going to be. Oftentimes, if somebody has this high need for arousal, and that translates into them becoming aggressive drivers, maybe we have to think of it in a different way. Maybe we have to get them to go through and think about other things that they can do with their aggressiveness. Hey, maybe it's go ahead, jump out of the airplane, but don't drive aggressively. I don't know, just something to think about. Can you think of any kind of text that we can include with this image that could reduce the instance of aggressive driving? Hey, if your grandmother's aggressive, why not be aggressive? Who knows? Or something like, hey, Granny's packing heat, don't cut her off. I don't know what kind of humor message would work, or if it's something that's going to be serious. What do you think? So just a little something I pulled out. Just to quote basically, don't confuse my personality with my attitude. My personality is who I am, but my attitude depends entirely on you. It's very true, isn't it? So our look at personality basically takes two different approaches. One, you have the psychoanalytic approach. Second, you have the trait approach. So let's look at each one of these. They do differ a little bit, and oftentimes it will work in one situation but not another. So understanding different ways of looking at it are important. According to Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalytic approach, a person's personality results from the clash between three forces: the id, the ego, and the superego. Now, according to Freud, we are all born with the id, which basically represents the physiological and primitive emotions that drive our actions. And these drives are basically completely unconscious, according to Freud, and they form a chaotic cauldron, if you will, of seething expectations, or excitations, I guess would be a better word. A person's id, though, requires instant gratification. And of its instincts and the operation that it has, it's basically trying to create pleasure. So this means that the id drives people to attain positive feelings and emotions. The ego, on the other hand, begins to develop as we grow out from being children, and it serves to curb the desires brought on by the id. This kind of helps us function effectively in the world. And according to Freud, the ego stands for reason and good sense, while the id stands for untamed passions. I don't know if you've seen some of the work in this area, but there's a video that's been out for a while about a researcher that called in children one by one into a room, and they put like a cupcake or a Rice Krispie treat or some type of, I think one of them was a marshmallow, and they tell them, hey, you sit right here, I got to go check on something, I'll be back in a minute. And here's the thing, if you don't eat the marshmallows, or eat a marshmallow or a piece of cake, whatever it is, I'm going to give you 2. And of course the kids are being filmed to see how they're going to react. Some of the kids are able to withstand the temptation of eating the marshmallow, while others have no choice and they just go ahead and eat away. And this kind of looks at, some of the same stuff about what drives what we're trying to do. On the other hand, the superego is basically the conscious or voice within all of us that echoes the morals and values that we learn from our parents and also society. The superego clashes with the id, and basically the ego is left to kind of resolve the conflict that arrives between the two. Now, marketers use psychoanalytics in determining what type of images that we can present in our marketing communication. And by tapping into various symbols, fantasies through the imagery that we're including, the thought is that they unconsciously propel people to buy. You'll see an example of this coming up in a future slide, so keep your eye out for that. Another way we look at it is the trait approach. And in the trait approach, people are classified according to their dominant traits. And a trait is basically a measurable characteristics that a person consistently has that differs from other people. And these traits describe people according to their predispositions on a series of adjectives or short phrases. Bear with me, you're going to see these in a second. Now, ad messages and the images that are constantly being used with a specific trait will attract the attention and most likely be perceived to be more favorable by consumers who possess that trait. For example, going back to consumers with a high need for arousal, they tend to be risk takers, and they are generally targeted by Red Bull with ads that activate that need for arousal. I mean, you look at all the things that Red Bull does. They have the guy that's, parachuting from subspace. You have their high-end energy looking ads with their motorcycles or with race cars or stuff like this. And again, it's supposed to feed in and tap into that aspect for risk-taking and need for arousal. So that type of activity attracts people with that trait, and it connects with them. One of the ways that we measure traits is basically through the Myers-Briggs typology, which was based on the work of Carl Jung, and we use it widely in personality tests today. The Myers-Briggs classifies people into 16 categories based on whether they fall into one group or another on the following dimensions. The first is the focus on attention, which may be through introversion or extroversion. Second is how we process information, which may be looked at through sensing or intuition. Sensing basically means to take in information in a sequential, step-by-step manner, while intuition basically means that we take in the information as a big picture and just try to make sense of it that way. Third is our decision making, which is basically a continuum between our thinking and our feeling. So how do we think? Do we make decisions based on thinking through it rationally, or do we gotta go with that gut feeling approach? Fourth is kind of how we deal with the outer world. And we will fall basically along a continuum between judging and perceiving. Judging is basically a systematic approach to meeting deadlines and achieving objectives, while perceiving is kind of a spontaneous approach to meeting deadlines and achieving those objectives. So when you decide on your preference in each of the categories, extroversion or introversion, which one are you, you can kind of determine your personality type based on the work of Myers and Briggs. Now, just to have a little fun, I found this that basically looked at all the different types from the Myers-Briggs, and it basically, once you have completed it, you will come up with how do you line up. For example, I line up with an ENTJ, which puts me in the category of major monogram. Now, I don't always put a complete stock in it. Some of the things I look at when I read about ENTJs kind of fit with me. Sometimes they don't. And I'm not going to go through all of these. You can go online and you can basically take the Myers-Briggs to determine where you sit and then maybe read up on it. Might help you a little bit. Perhaps the most widely recognized approach to measuring personality traits is what's known as the Big Five, or the Neo-Personality Inventory. It's basically a set of 5 dimensions that form the basis of personality: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Now, openness to experience is basically the degree to which a person is open to trying new things. And we may ask a question on some type of personality test: do you love to think up new ways of doing something? Agree or disagree? Conscientiousness basically is the level of organization and a structure that a person needs. We can ask the question, for example, agree or disagree? I am always prepared. Extroversion, on the other hand, gets a bad rap or is oftentimes misunderstood. Extroversion basically determines how well a person tolerates being stimulated from external sources. And a lot of it is we think that it's, oh, people are shy, they're introverts. Well, not always going to be the case. Oftentimes when we think about extroversion versus introversion, it's a matter of where do you get stimulated from? Do you get stimulated by sitting alone, working quiet, nobody distracting you, or can you get stimulated by talking to other people? Which way is going to be most effective for you? The fourth aspect, agreeableness, is basically the degree to which we defer to other people. Are we going to take time out for other people, or are we going to be very selfish with our time? So again, it's just looking at different ways of this. In neuroticism, the last dimension, if you will, is basically, you can look at it as emotional instability. And this looks at how well a person can cope with different levels of stress. So if you get upset easily, that's going to be one way that we can measure it. And again, looking at it, we can kind of get an idea about who a person is. Now, one thing that I want to put here and make sure that's well understood: personality is not something fixed in stone. Oftentimes we think that it is, but because of certain events in your life, traumatic events could shift your personality. Things can change. Now, it's hard to go from being an introvert to an extrovert, but other things can change with our personality. But in that vein, what about brands? Does a brand have personality? We have looked, and the researchers basically have come up with that brands can have a personality, and basically it can be one of 5 different dimensions. A brand can be sincere, can drive excitement or propel excitement, can look at competence, sophistication, or ruggedness. These are basically the 5 dimensions of brand personality. And this is part of your homework for the week. You have to come up with brands that kind of fall into or don't fall into these categories. So keep that in mind as you're moving forward. Researchers have studied other traits. For example, we're going to talk about a few of them, but here's one: compulsive buying. Now, compulsive buying is basically defined as the chronic, repetitive purchasing that becomes a major response to negative events or feelings. I guess you could say retail therapy. But, oftentimes we look at the questions that are used, and here's 4 of them. So tell me what you think. 1, bought things even though I couldn't afford them. 2, felt others would be horrified if they knew my spending habits. 3, felt anxious or nervous on days I didn't go shopping. And 4, bought something in order to make myself feel better. Now, these are just 4 of the questions. There's a lot more of them. I would probably answer to the affirmative for 1. I bought things I couldn't afford at times, and sometimes I buy things to make myself feel better. Just because I would answer positively on those 2 dimensions doesn't mean I have compulsive buying. It's kind of, you have to be high on almost all of these questions. So, again, it is a trait that we look at. Marketers should not try to exploit this trait, though. Now, there are some other traits that we could look at. For example, value consciousness, materialism, innovativeness, need for cognition, competitiveness, and productivity. All of these can tap into, or understanding these traits can help marketers tap into consumers that exhibit these traits in certain situations. So let's take a look at a couple of these. There are a large number of people that love getting a deal. Almost all of us like getting a deal at some times, but some focus on it greatly. And value consciousness basically taps in to help us understand people that have this trait. And this is defined as a consumer's tendency to focus on maximizing what they receive in a transaction. One of the ways you could look at this is that anytime that a consumer feels that they got the best end of the deal, they feel really good about what they got, and I guess they won in the deal, they have a high level of value consciousness. So finding people that have this trait and then allowing them to win in a certain way or feel that they've won is a very positive and long-term rewarding experience for consumers. In turn, it's going to be very positive for marketers that can tap into it and understand it very well. The next trait, materialism, is basically the extent to which material goods have an importance in a consumer's life. There are those consumers that just want to acquire as much stuff as possible. Now, this is not the same as hoarding. Hoarding is basically you have an innate desire that you have to just save everything and can't throw it away. Materialism, basically, you want to just continue to buy goods, and because it's important to you to have the best toys, the best of everything. We can tap into this dimension because these are the people that will spend $8,000 when the first video recorder came out. They're the first ones to buy a lot of things. Now keep in mind that a lot of times when we look at some of these traits, they are situational. For example, the trait innovativeness is basically how open an individual is to new ideas and how early they are adopting new products. For many products, technology is, I guess, my weakness. I would rate very high on this, but maybe trying new foods, not so much. Oftentimes when I travel overseas, there's a local fare that people, that countries have or areas have. I'm not often too willing to try a lot of this new stuff. Now, one of the most important traits is what we call need for cognition. And this is the degree to which a consumer wants to engage in effortful cognitive thinking. How much effort do they want to put into thinking about and processing some information? Those that have high NFC, they're pretty much influenced by the quality of the argument in an advertisement, while those with low NFC are influenced by the endorser's attractiveness and cues that have nothing to do with the message or with the product itself. Let me show you an example of this. This is an ad for Hardee's and Carl's Jr., which is a combined chain. And again, you see the burger in the front, you see on the couch in the back, you see the star, which represents Hardee's, but the rest of the ad has nothing to do with a hamburger. But it is very effective for getting somebody's attention that has low NFC. There's also the trait that centers around competitiveness. And here's people that strive to be better than others, strive to have better things than others, to have the bigger house or the better car. Understanding these consumers allows us also to tap into what affects or what influences them and create opportunities for a marketer to, I don't want to say take advantage of, but basically to allow people to be more competitive by selling them a better product, a more expensive product. The last trait I want to talk about in this section is basically the trait of productivity. And here it's the tendency to focus on being more productive, make progress, and accomplish more in less time. You have a large group of people that think that, wow, if I can just be more productive, more effective, I'm going to get more done. And they invest in certain types of products that may help them do this. Going out and buying a planner or a product that promises to save them 10% of the time, or whatever it's going to be, is going to really be attractive to this type of consumer. So, all right, so that's the first lecture for this week. The second one's coming right behind it, so stay tuned for that. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you soon.